The morning of my wedding, I woke up to a text from my future mother-in-law. "We've taken your dress, the venue is cancelled, and your fiancé knows what's best." My hands shook as I dialed his number, but when I showed up at the ceremony, they were the ones who got a nasty surprise. I should have known something was off. The signs were there, flashing like warning lights that I willfully ignored. My future mother-in-law, Martha, never liked me, not even from day one. She would smile that tight, practiced smile whenever David was around, her arm linked with his possessively, her eyes tracking my every move. But when we were alone, that's when the mask slipped, and I saw the real Martha. "Don't you think that's a bit common?" she had said, eyeing the engagement ring David had given me. It wasn't flashy, but it was perfect, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. "I love it," I had replied, refusing to let her dim my happiness. She had simply pursed her lips, that dismissive look I'd come to know well. "Well, I suppose David knows what he's doing." That was just the beginning. Over the months of wedding planning, Martha inserted herself into every decision, questioning my choices at every turn. She hated my dress, a fitted lace gown with a sweetheart neckline that made me feel beautiful. "It's not very flattering on your figure, dear," she had commented while I stood on the pedestal at the bridal boutique, my mom and best friend Sarah exclaiming how gorgeous I looked. Martha's words had cut through their enthusiasm like a knife, leaving me suddenly self-conscious. She wanted a different venue, too, not the charming converted barn with twinkling lights and wooden beams that David and I had fallen in love with, but the country club where she was a board member. "People of our standing have expectations," she'd said, as if I were somehow beneath them. Every suggestion I made, she countered. Every decision I finalized, she attempted to change. She tried pushing her own ideas, from the flowers, lilies instead of my chosen peonies, to the menu, salmon instead of the barbecue station David and I wanted. And when I didn't agree, she pouted like a child denied candy, calling David to complain that I was being difficult. I thought she was just an overbearing mother, clinging too tightly to her only son. I thought David was different. I thought he had my back when he said things like, "Just ignore her, babe. This is our wedding." But I was about to find out just how wrong I was. I woke up that Saturday morning feeling a mixture of excitement, nerves, and pure, undiluted joy. This was my wedding day. The day I had planned for months, agonizing over details until they were perfect. The day I had spent thousands of dollars on, draining my savings account because David had insisted we split the cost to be fair. The day I was supposed to walk down the aisle and start my future with the man I loved. The late September sun streamed through the curtains of my apartment, casting golden light across the room where my dress hung on the closet door, radiant and waiting. I stretched, savoring the moment, thinking about how this would be the last morning I'd wake up as just me. By tomorrow, I would be a wife, part of a team, part of forever. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Probably Sarah, I thought, reaching for it. She was due to arrive in an hour to help me get ready. But the name on my screen made my stomach clench, Martha. I opened the message, expecting some last-minute complaint or demand. Instead, what I read sent ice through my veins. "We've taken your dress, the venue is cancelled, and your fiancé knows what's best. Don't make a scene, just accept it." At first, I thought I was still dreaming. My head felt light, disconnected from my body. My stomach twisted into knots, and I had to read the message at least 3 times before it sank in. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My heart was pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I immediately called David, my fingers fumbling over the screen. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. A third time. Nothing. "David," I whispered, my voice breaking. "What is going on? Call me back. Please." I called my maid of honor, Sarah, who had been my best friend since college. No answer. Something cold and heavy settled in my chest. This couldn't be happening. With trembling fingers, I called the venue. The woman on the phone hesitated before telling me, "Oh yes, David called early this morning and canceled everything. I'm so sorry." "But that's impossible," I stammered. "The wedding is today. In 5 hours. There's been a mistake." Another pause. "He said to tell you he was sorry if you called, but it was for the best." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I leapt out of bed and ran to my closet. My dress was gone. The shoes I had picked out, gone. Even the veil, missing. The reality of the situation crashed over me like a wave. They had taken everything. They had waited until the last possible moment to pull the rug out from under me, thinking I'd be too devastated to fight back. They were wrong. Panic turned into something worse, something sharp, something dangerous. A cold clarity washed over me. They had planned this. All of them. David, Martha, and who else? Why would they do this to me? What could I have possibly done to deserve this level of cruelty? I threw on the first clothes I could find, jeans, a t-shirt, my old running shoes, and grabbed my keys. If my dress was gone, someone had to have taken it. My first thought was to drive to David's house, but something told me not to waste my time. Instead, I drove straight to Martha's, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The 20-minute drive to her sprawling colonial in the affluent part of town seemed to take hours. My mind raced, playing through scenarios, trying to make sense of it all. Had David changed his mind? Had Martha somehow convinced him I wasn't right for him? Was this some kind of sick joke? I pulled into Martha's circular driveway, noticing David's car wasn't there. I marched up to the door and rang the bell, then pounded with my fist when no one answered immediately. The moment she opened the door, I saw it in her eyes, smug satisfaction. She didn't even pretend to be surprised to see me. She just sighed and leaned against the doorway, like I was an inconvenience she had to deal with. "You need to calm down," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. Calm down? Calm down? I was standing there in casual clothes on the morning of my wedding, and this woman, this witch, was telling me to calm down. "Where's my dress?" I demanded. Martha didn't even blink. "It's gone, and you won't need it anyway. The wedding is off." I felt my pulse in my ears, blood rushing so loud it nearly drowned out her words. "You don't get to make that decision," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. "You don't have the power to cancel my wedding." That smug smirk. I wanted to slap it off her face. David made the call. He's doing what's best. I took a deep breath. "Where is he?" "Busy," she said, examining her manicured nails as if this conversation was boring her. I don't know how I didn't scream. I don't know how I didn't break something, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to get anywhere with her, so I left. But I wasn't done, not even close. As I climbed back into my car, a horrible realization dawned on me. If Martha had pulled something like this, there was no way she had just canceled the wedding. She had done something worse. I had a horrible feeling in my gut, and I needed answers. So I drove to the venue, my mind racing. The converted barn was located on a picturesque farm just outside of town, surrounded by rolling hills and ancient oak trees. As I approached, my suspicions were confirmed. Cars were pulling into the gravel parking lot. Guests were arriving, dressed in their finest. The venue was decorated exactly as I had planned because the wedding wasn't canceled. It just wasn't my wedding anymore. I parked my car and sat there for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. The fairy lights I had chosen were strung across the entrance. The floral arrangements I had picked out, peonies and eucalyptus, adorned the doors. The wooden sign I had hand-painted was propped against a whiskey barrel, "Welcome to our wedding." But it wasn't my wedding. Not anymore. I got out of my car and walked toward the entrance, my legs moving automatically even as my mind reeled. Nobody stopped me. People I knew, people who had been invited to my wedding, smiled at me as I passed, completely unaware of the nightmare unfolding. Some looked confused at my casual attire, but I didn't stop to explain. I made it to the doors and stepped inside. The barn was transformed exactly as I had envisioned, rustic chic, with white drapery softening the wooden beams, candles flickering on every surface, and hundreds of twinkling lights creating a magical atmosphere. Everything was perfect. Except there, at the altar, making last-minute adjustments to her dress, my dress, was Rachel. My vision blurred with rage. My whole body went cold, then hot, then cold again. Rachel had been my friend. We had met through a mutual college friend 3 years ago, and she had quickly ingratiated herself into our social circle. She had always been close with David. Too close. I had ignored the little comments, the playful touches, the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I had been so stupid, and now she was standing at the altar in my dress, preparing to marry my fiancé, like I never even existed. I stood frozen in the entrance, watching as guests took their seats. Some of my friends were there, looking uncomfortable but present nonetheless. My relatives were noticeably absent, thank God for small mercies, but David's entire family was in attendance, including his father, who had always been kind to me, now sitting stoically in the front row. The betrayal was suffocating. It choked me, crushed my chest, made me feel like I was sinking into the floor. David stood near the front, adjusting his cufflinks, looking calm, relaxed, like this wasn't the most disgusting, humiliating, psychotic thing he had ever done. And that's when it all clicked. This wasn't last minute. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. David had let me spend months planning this wedding. He let me send out invitations to my friends and family. He let me spend thousands of dollars. He let me think I was about to marry the love of my life, while in reality, he was planning to marry someone else. He was going to let me wake up, realize my wedding was cancelled, and disappear from his life like I was some random girl he had once dated. They were going to erase me, and they thought I would just accept it. They thought I would just go away. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I stood there frozen at the back of the barn. People were laughing, chatting, taking their seats, completely unaware that this wasn't just a normal wedding, it was a hijacking. Martha was at the front, smiling proudly, probably thinking she had pulled off the perfect crime. Rachel adjusted my veil, glowing like a fake-ass angel. And David? David wasn't nervous. He wasn't guilty. He wasn't looking around for me, wondering where I was, because he knew. Because he was in on it. Something inside me cracked. I should have cried. I should have broken down right there in front of everyone, but instead, a strange, calm feeling settled over me. They had taken everything from me, my dress, my venue, my fiancé, my wedding, but I wasn't gone yet. I straightened my shoulders and kept walking, moving down the aisle with purpose. A few people glanced at me, some with confusion, some with recognition. Whispers started, rippling through the crowd like a wave, but nobody stopped me until I reached the front row. Martha's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw it for the first time: fear. She stood up quickly, stepping in front of me like she could physically block me from ruining her fantasy. "You need to leave," she hissed, her voice low but urgent. I smiled, actually smiled. "I think I'll stay." The whispers were growing louder now. Guests were nudging each other, pointing discreetly. I saw my cousin Rebecca staring at me, eyes wide with shock. My college friends were there, looking horrified. I looked toward Sarah, my maid of honor, my best friend since freshman year, and that's when I noticed something. She looked guilty, like she knew. My stomach twisted painfully. I had been betrayed by my fiancé, by my fake friend Rachel, by his psycho mother, but Sarah too? That hurt the most. She opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't in the mood to hear excuses. I turned back to Martha, who was still trying to act like she had control. "You weren't invited," she said, forcing a smile for the benefit of those watching. I laughed, loud and hollow, because last I checked, this was supposed to be my wedding. David turned then, finally noticing the commotion. His face was blank at first, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of panic. Rachel, standing beside him at the altar, went pale. People were definitely watching now, the ceremony forgotten as the drama unfolded. David stepped forward, his voice calm, practiced. "Let's not do this here." I tilted my head, studying him like I was seeing him for the first time. "Oh, but you wanted to do this here, didn't you?" I gestured around the venue. "Since you planned this whole thing behind my back." Rachel tried to grab David's arm, like she could somehow fix this mess with her touch. "Look, we didn't," she started. I cut her off. "You didn't what, Rachel? Didn't steal my fiancé? Didn't wear my dress? Didn't let me plan my own wedding while you stood in the background waiting to take my place?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I turned back to David. "How long?" I asked. He didn't answer. "How long have you been planning this?" Still nothing. Rachel fidgeted with the lace on my dress, that she was wearing. "It just happened," she said weakly. I let out a sharp laugh. "It just happened? Oh, so you just tripped and fell into my wedding dress, into my fiancé's bed?" Martha sighed dramatically. "Stop making a scene." I snapped my head toward her. "You planned this, didn't you?" She didn't deny it. "You manipulated your son, convinced him to humiliate me, all because you couldn't stand the thought of him marrying someone you didn't approve of." Martha's silence was confirmation enough. I nodded, a cold, detached feeling spreading through me. "You know what, Martha? I was so ready to be the bigger person, to marry your son and tolerate you for the rest of my life." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "But now I'm going to destroy you." She flinched. "Good." David finally spoke, his voice too calm, too controlled. "It's over, okay? Let's just move on." "Move on? Move on?" I felt something inside me snap. "All right," I said, pulling out my phone. "Then let's tell everyone exactly what's going on." I hit play. Martha's voice blasted through the speakers. "We've taken your dress, the venue is cancelled, and your fiancé knows what's best." Then David's voice, "Babe, I'm sorry, but my mom is right. You're just not good enough. Rachel is better suited for me. She'll be a proper wife." Complete silence fell over the barn. It was so quiet I could hear someone drop their champagne glass in the back. Rachel took a step away from David, looking horrified. Martha's face drained of color. And David? David looked like he was going to throw up. I had recorded our last phone conversation. The one where he told me I wasn't good enough. The one where he admitted his mother had orchestrated it all. The one he thought I was too emotional to remember. I took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. Then I leaned in, looking Rachel dead in the eye. "Still want him?" She bolted, gathering up the skirts of my dress and rushing down the aisle, pushing past stunned guests. Martha turned to David, her voice shrill. "You told her that?" David was still frozen, like his brain couldn't process how badly this was going for him. I pulled out another piece of paper. "You know what else I have?" I said, unfolding it slowly. "The bill for the wedding." Martha's head snapped toward me. "What?" "See, David and I signed financial agreements before the wedding, which means he owes me for everything." Her mouth fell open. $35,000, I said, reading the number off the paper. "Due immediately." David's face was pure horror. "That's not." I shrugged. "It's in writing, signed, legal." Then I smiled. "And if you don't pay," I leaned in, "well, you know I love a good public scandal." Martha looked ready to faint. David stammered, You can't." "Oh, I can." I turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show, because it's not over yet." David looked like a cornered rat. Martha's mouth was opening and closing, but no words were coming out. The guests? Stunned. Some people had their phones out, recording everything. Rachel had disappeared. Good. But Sarah, my so-called best friend, was still standing there, frozen in guilt. I wasn't done. David had taken everything from me. His mother had made sure of it. They had wanted me to be too embarrassed, too broken to fight back, but they had underestimated me, and now I was going to ruin them. Just as Martha was about to open her mouth, probably to screech some excuse, the door swung open. A man in a sharp suit walked in, briefcase in hand. "Apologies for the interruption," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. David's face went ghost white because this was my lawyer. "Miss," he nodded at me, "everything is in order." I smiled. Perfect timing. Martha actually grabbed David's arm, like she could hold him up before he collapsed. "You got a lawyer?" She spat. I turned to her. "Of course I did. You and your son stole my wedding, my money, and my time. You think I wasn't going to get some legal backup?" Gasps from the guests. Some people were whispering loudly now. David finally found his voice. "This is ridiculous." My lawyer didn't even look at him. "According to the financial agreement signed prior to this event, you, David, are legally bound to cover all wedding expenses." David choked on air. $35,000, my lawyer continued, non-negotiable. Martha lost it. "This is a scam." She shrieked. The lawyer didn't blink. "No, ma'am, it's legally binding. You planned this wedding, then swapped out the bride last minute. That means your son now owns the bill." The color drained from David's face. "You have until the end of the day," my lawyer added, "before legal action is taken." A waiter coughed to hide a laugh. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Holy shit," and then another voice spoke up. "Wait." Sarah, her voice shaky. I turned. I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear what she had to say, but she looked broken. She took a deep breath. I knew. More gasps. David's head whipped toward her. "Sarah, shut up." She shook her head wildly. "No, I can't. I can't keep lying." Tears welled in her eyes. "Martha told me weeks ago. She told me they were planning to replace you." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "She said you weren't the right kind of wife for David." I felt sick. My best friend had known. Sarah wiped her eyes. "I wanted to tell you, I really did, but Martha. She threatened me. She said if I warned you, she'd ruin me. She'd make sure I lost my job." I blinked. "Your job?" More murmurs from the guests. Sarah looked down, ashamed. "Martha owns the firm I work at," she said. "She said she'd fire me if I told you." Martha crossed her arms. And I would have. The crowd booed. Someone yelled, "Are you serious?" Sarah looked at me, desperate. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. I was weak, and I held up a hand. I couldn't process this right now. I turned back to David and Martha. You really threatened my best friend's job just to get rid of me? Martha rolled her eyes. It's called handling problems. I let out a breath. Unbelievable. But Sarah wasn't done. She turned to David, hands shaking. Tell her the rest. David froze. Martha whirled on her. Sarah, don't you dare. Sarah's voice rose. Tell her the rest. David? Silence. Dead silence. I watched David's face crumble. I knew then it was even worse than I thought. I stepped forward. David? He wouldn't look at me. Tell me. David swallowed hard, his hands clenched, his jaw locked. Then he finally muttered, Rachel's pregnant. The room exploded. I staggered back like I'd been physically hit. Pregnant? Pregnant? I heard people gasping, whispering, muttering curses. Rachel had been my friend. She had stolen my fiancé, wore my dress, tried to take my wedding, and now she was having his baby? And I was supposed to just disappear? David had the nerve to look sorry, like an apology would fix this. I looked at Martha. So that's what this was about. That's why you wanted me gone. She shrugged, like it was obvious. Rachel is giving my son an heir, she said, as if we were in some medieval royal family. I laughed, actually laughed. David winced. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I held up a hand. Just don't. I turned to the guests. Everyone, let's give a big round of applause to David and Rachel, who were expecting a child after stabbing me in the back. Someone actually clapped. A woman in the back muttered, I need more popcorn for this. David looked miserable. Martha was seething. I was done. I turned to my lawyer. Are we good? He nodded. I'll handle the rest. Perfect. I smoothed down my clothes. Then I walked out, because I had one more move to make, and this was just the beginning. I should have left. I wanted to leave, but something inside me told me I wasn't finished yet, because after everything, after the stolen wedding, the lies, the betrayal, there was still something missing, and I needed to know exactly what it was. I turned back to David, who was rubbing his temples like all of this was just giving him a headache, like I was just some problem to deal with. Martha was muttering under her breath, shooting Sarah a death glare, probably wishing she could set her on fire with her mind. The guests were eating this up. Some had their hands over their mouths in shock. Others had their phones out, recording. And then Rachel walked back in. She looked furious, not guilty, not embarrassed. Furious. You just had to ruin everything, she snapped at me, marching straight down the aisle in my dress, like she still belonged there. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I ruin your big day? She crossed her arms, breathing hard. You weren't supposed to find out like this, she hissed. I stared at her, stunned for a moment. Then I laughed, actually laughed. You're unbelievable, I said. What part of this did you think I wouldn't find out? The part where you stole my fiancé? The part where you wore my dress? Or the part where you're pregnant with his baby? She flinched at that, and I knew then that wasn't supposed to come out. David groaned. Rachel, stop talking. I pounced. What else is there, Rachel? I pressed. You might as well spill it all now. She looked away. Martha suddenly stepped forward, panicking. Rachel, don't you dare. Too late. Rachel snapped, you think I'm the bad guy? She spat. Do you have any idea what I was promised? The whole room went silent. David's head jerked up. Rachel, shut up. But she was done keeping secrets. They told me I'd have a perfect life, she said, eyes burning, that David would marry me, that we'd be this perfect couple, that I'd be the new face of their family. I felt my stomach turn. Martha had planned this way before today. She had handpicked Rachel like a replacement doll. And David? David had gone along with it. Rachel's voice wobbled. But now I see the truth. I was never going to be the wife. I was just a way to get rid of you. Her eyes narrowed as she turned to Martha. And once the baby is here, you were going to push me out too, weren't you? Martha's face tightened. Don't be ridiculous. Rachel took a step closer, shaking her head. Oh my God, you weren't you? That's why you kept saying the baby was the only thing that mattered. David stiffened. Rachel, let's talk about this later. But she was spiraling now. You lied to me, she whispered, staring at him. You said you loved me. Martha scoffed. Love doesn't matter, Rachel. A strong family matters. That was it. Rachel lost it. She yanked off the veil, threw it at Martha's feet, and let out a sharp, bitter laugh. I was just another pawn, she said, voice cracking, just like her. She pointed at me, and suddenly it hit me. Rachel wasn't my replacement. Rachel and I had been the same. She had fallen for it too. The only difference? I got out before it was too late. Rachel wiped her eyes, turned without another word, and walked out. David called after her, panicked now. Rachel. Rachel, wait. She didn't. And then Martha snapped. This is your fault. She screamed at me, actually pointing. I blinked. My fault? She jabbed a finger at my chest. If you had just left quietly, none of this would have happened. I let out a breath. You really don't get it, do you? I said, shaking my head. David didn't love me, and guess what? He doesn't love Rachel either. You've controlled his entire life, and now you've ruined it. David's jaw clenched. Martha turned on him. Say something, she demanded. David just stood there, silent, pathetic, a man who had finally realized he had lost everything. I could have destroyed him more. I could have made one final, brutal remark that would have buried him, but he wasn't worth it. None of them were. So I stepped back. I turned to my lawyer. Let's go. He nodded, adjusting his tie. We'll send the final paperwork later. I walked down the aisle, the one I was supposed to walk down in a white dress, past the stunned guests, past the whispers, past Martha shaking with rage. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. David tried to contact me, of course he did. The messages were pathetic. Can we talk? I made a mistake. I just need a chance to explain. I never answered. Rachel disappeared. She moved out of state. No one really knows where she went. Some say she had an abortion, others say she kept the baby. I don't particularly care either way. Martha? Well, she lost everything. The wedding scandal spread like wildfire, several guests had recorded the entire thing, and it went viral within days. David never recovered from the public humiliation. His business deals fell through. People stopped trusting him, and when Martha's reputation started going downhill, she turned on David. I heard she moved away to start fresh, without him. Karma. Karma did all the work for me. And me? I thrived. I moved to a new city, found a job I loved, made real friends who actually cared about me, and I stopped. Stopped looking back. Because the truth is, I won. Not because I got revenge. Not because I embarrassed them. But because I walked away, because I found a life that was so much better than the one they tried to trap me in. And because now, when I look back at that day, at that text, that betrayal, that entire disaster, I don't feel anything at all. And that's the best revenge of all.